Today we are talking about glute max activation, a muscle that has a tendency to get weak or underactive. Now the hips house a whole range of muscles, and there are actually three major muscles that we consider to be the glutes. However, today we will be talking mainly about the glute maximus, the muscle that's most responsible for hip extension in the sagittal plane. Now when we talk about activation, what we're actually talking about is the body's ability or the brain's ability to create a pathway between the brain and that muscle. That is, your ability to consciously contract and use that muscle. Now, a lot of people, due to poor posture or poor lifestyle, have an inability to contract the glute max at will. And as such, a whole range of other muscles will end up interfering or compensating for that weakness or lack of activation at the glute max. Today, I want to show you a couple of drills that you can use as part of your warm-up to help activate your glute max that will hopefully transfer to your squat and deadlift so that you're actually using your glutes to lift the weight and to extend your hip. Now, when we talk about activation, there are two types of activation drills that I would often prescribe to my lifters: non-specific and specific. Non-specific drills are drills where we isolate a certain movement. So whether it's the glute max or a different muscle group, it's where we isolate a specific movement in a really small range of motion or a limited range of motion to highlight or to exaggerate the contraction that occurs at that one muscle group to help create a pathway between the brain and that muscle. This is in a setting or conditions that aren't related to the task at hand. So for example, you're not in a squat position or a deadlift position for a powerlifter. As you can tell, specific drills will be ones where the glutes are trained to activate and contract in the specific positions and movements of a squat and a deadlift, or whatever the task happens to be with which the athlete competes or trains with. So today I'll be talking about non-specific glute max activation drills and a really basic set of progressions that you can use to help train your glutes so that they're contracting and you're actually able to use them. Okay, so the first exercise or the first place that I would start with someone is to have them in a prone, isolated, terminal hip extension drill. It sounds a lot more complicated than it is. All we simply do is we take the athlete and have them lay face down or prone, and they lie in a nice relaxed position. The idea here is to extend the hips as much as we can, one leg at a time, as hard as we can to activate the glute max, because the glute max is responsible for that hip extension. Now, our overactive synergists, or the muscles that will end up compensating if we do have a weakness through the glute max, are going to be our lumbar erectors, our hamstrings, and even the posterior head of the adductor magnus. So what we want to do is we want to position ourselves so that we're not using these muscle groups to interfere. So what we're going to do is we're going to activate the TVA, or we're going to contract the rectus abdominis. We're also going to lock the knee out with the quads so that the hamstrings don't involve themselves. And to remove input from the adductor group, we're going to slightly abduct the hip. So from here, we're just going to simply ask the lifter or the athlete to raise their knee off the ground while keeping all of these postural cues in line. What you're going to find is that in order to lift the leg off the ground, they have no choice but to activate their glutes. So with someone that has a really poor ability to contract their glutes, this really closed environment is a great opportunity for them to isolate and feel that muscle group activating. You'll have them do this for 2 to 3 sets, maybe 10 to 20 reps, 2 or 3 times a week. Once they've progressed, what we can simply do is simply add load as a progression. So you might add a small ankle weight to around the knee or calf or ankle, depending on the weight. And if they're able to perform 10 to 20 reps with a small ankle weight around their ankle and maintain all of their postural cues, keeping their TVA activated, keeping their knees locked and keeping their legs slightly in abduction, then we can progress them to a more full range of motion. So this is where I'd have them in a quadruped position. Now it's the exact same movement, except we're going to be in a larger range of motion. So over a stability ball or over a bench, we're going to have the athlete in a quadruped position, so on all fours. The same cues apply. We're going to maintain activation through the TVA. We're going to reach our leg as far back as we can while keeping our knees locked. And we're also going to be slightly abducting, and it might even help to externally rotate at the hip to help isolate and activate that glute max. Now, the key here is to not have the athlete or the lifter aim for maximum range of motion. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We're not trying to lift the leg up as high as we can. You only have about 10 degrees of hip extension beyond parallel. So anything more than 10 degrees, you end up extending through your lumbar. We end up extending through your erectors. So we don't want that. We only want to get as high as we can through maximal glute max activation. Now, it's important to note that there are a whole range of other ways that we can activate your glutes. You might perform clams or lateral band walks or monster band walks, or a whole range and a whole host of other glute activation drills. But what we need to understand is that these are drills that don't activate the glute max, or they activate the glutes in a more holistic fashion. These aren't necessarily bad things. However, what we are simply talking about today is activating the glute max in a hip extension movement. So that's the drill that I've shown you today. So again, guys, this is a really basic drill that you can use to help activate your glutes. A great place to start, like I said, would be 3 sets, 10 to 20 reps. Do this at the start of your training session to help fire the glutes. Towards the end of the set, you might feel a light burn, like a lactic acidy feeling. That's a signal that you're sending blood and lactate and waste products to the right area, which helps your actual feedback, helps your proprioception of that area, and actually helps you contract that muscle even further throughout the rest of your training session. If you're unsure about what you can possibly do to help activate your glutes, there is no substitute for seeing a qualified allied health professional like a myotherapist, physiotherapist, osteo, chiro, or even a strength and conditioning coach. They'll be best to help you learn how to use your glutes maximally and actually take advantage of your movement patterns and whatever weaknesses you might have and address those things to help you achieve your goals. However, I do hope this short YouTube video was helpful for you. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comment section below. I'll speak to you next time. Hips house a whole range of muscles, and there are a number of muscles that can be fucking Jesus. I should probably put that on silent. Oh, stop receiving emails. That was so shit.